The mobile phone's ring shattered the silence of the hotel room. Catherine flinched in surprise, nearly spilling her coffee. The clock showed almost midnight. "Hello," she murmured sleepily. "Catherine, you have to come immediately," her neighbor Olivia's voice sounded alarmed. "There are some people in your apartment." In Catherine's mind, it was like a grenade had exploded. Sleep vanished instantly. "What do you mean, in my apartment? I'm on a business trip, 300 miles away." "I don't know," Olivia whispered, as if afraid someone might be listening. "But there's noise, banging. Music is playing. I saw a woman who looked like your mother-in-law, and with her, a young girl with suitcases." Cold sweat broke out on Catherine. Gwen. Of course. Who else? Her mother-in-law had never hidden her attitude toward her son's choice, an unsuitable match, a career woman, not made for family. Catherine had heard these phrases behind her back constantly. "Call the police," Catherine snapped, hurriedly pulling on her jeans with one hand. Olivia began. "They said they're coming, but there was a strange noise on the line." "Oh, it seems the girl is coming out. I'll call back." Catherine sank onto the edge of the bed. Her throat went dry. How could Gwen have gotten into the apartment? Her mother-in-law didn't have keys. And Lucas was on an expedition somewhere in the Altai Mountains. Contact with him was only via satellite phone once every 3 days. Her memory helpfully brought up the last conversation with her mother-in-law. "You're leaving the house for 2 weeks?" Gwen pursed her lips, clearly disapproving. "And what about making it cozy for my son?" "We have a partnership relationship," Catherine had replied then. "Lucas understands everything." "Partnership," Gwen snorted. "In my day, wives thought about family, not careers." The phone rang again. "Olivia, what's going on?" "Catherine, this is unbelievable," the neighbor gasped with excitement. "The police arrived, and this girl claimed she's Viola, your mother-in-law's daughter. And that you and Lucas allowed her to live here." Catherine jumped up, feeling everything inside her boil. "What nonsense! Lucas has no sister. Only a cousin, in Canada." "That surprised me too," Olivia exclaimed. "But she showed some documents. She said your mother-in-law is her mother." "The police are confused. They're asking if you have proof that it's not true." Catherine's hands trembled. A sharp pounding filled her temples. "Documents? What documents?" "Wait." A memory flashed from 3 years ago. Lucas had once casually mentioned that Gwen had a daughter from a first marriage, but they hadn't been in contact for many years. Back then, Catherine had decided it was just a family legend. Her mother-in-law never mentioned another child. "Olivia, tell the police I'm coming immediately. Let them file a report. And try to take a photo of this Viola." Getting ready, Catherine dialed Lucas's number. As expected, the voicemail said the subscriber was out of network coverage. After 5 exhausting hours of nighttime driving, Catherine parked in front of her house. The windows of the apartment she shared with Lucas on the 3rd floor were lit, even though the clock showed 5 a.m. The police car had already left. Olivia waited by the entrance, wrapped in a puffer jacket. "Can you believe it? Your mother-in-law and this Viola told the police that Lucas is her brother, and he allowed them to stay here while you're both away. And the police believed them." Catherine barely controlled her fury. "They had some papers. And the locks weren't broken. The police said, it's a family conflict. Deal with it yourselves." Catherine looked up at the glowing windows. A female figure flashed in their bedroom. "Do you have a photo?" Olivia handed over the phone. This is Viola. But your mother-in-law didn't get in the frame. On the screen, Catherine saw a young blonde woman with a haughty expression. There was something strangely familiar in her features. Thanks, Olivia. I'll handle it from here. Climbing the stairs, Catherine thought frantically. Only she and Lucas had keys to the apartment. Yes, another set was with her mother, in another city. So Gwen must have somehow gotten a duplicate. Through Lucas? But why would he do that? Stopping in front of her door, Catherine took a deep breath and inserted the key into the lock. The door opened effortlessly, as if it were expected. The hallway light was on. An unfamiliar coat hung on the rack. Strange shoes were on the shelf. Quiet music came from the living room. Well, the hostess has arrived, Gwen appeared, as if she were at home. A wave of anger surged through Catherine, but she held back. What are you doing here, Gwen? And on what grounds did you enter my apartment? Her mother-in-law smiled thinly. No need to be so nervous, Catherine. I just helped my daughter, who had nowhere to live. Lucas didn't mind. Lucas is on an expedition and unaware of what's going on, Catherine replied firmly. And this is the first time I'm hearing about a daughter. Until now, she only existed in conversations. The very blonde from the photograph emerged from the room. The carefully applied makeup did not hide signs of sleeplessness. She was wearing Catherine's silk robe. Hi, I'm Viola, the girl said with a forced friendliness. Lucas has told me so much about you. Something in her tone made Catherine wary. She looked more closely at Viola's face and suddenly realized what unsettled her. The girl's eyes were surprisingly similar to Lucas's. I didn't know my husband had a sister, Catherine said slowly. He never mentioned you. Viola and Gwen exchanged quick glances. Oh, well, that's so like Lucas, Viola laughed. He's always been secretive. A family trait. Catherine walked into the living room, noticing some things had already been moved. On the coffee table were cups, cookie crumbs, and an open laptop. Her laptop. You used my things? Catherine's voice sounded sharp as metal. Only the essentials, Gwen shrugged. Viola needs somewhere to live while she looks for a job in your city. You have so much space. Lucas and I thought it was reasonable. Stop lying. Catherine crossed her arms. Lucas would never agree to this without my knowledge. And he definitely wouldn't give you the keys. Well, we have keys. Viola dramatically pulled a keyring from the pocket of her robe. See? Brother took care of it. Catherine looked closely at the keys. They were new duplicates, shiny, without scratches. How did you do this? She shifted her gaze from Viola to Gwen. Did you pick the lock? Bribe the locksmith? Gwen rolled her eyes. What dramatic words. Nobody broke in. Lucas had spare keys in his desk, where he keeps important documents. A chill ran down Catherine's spine. In his desk. But how? The answer came instantly. 2 months ago, Gwen had visited when Lucas was home and Catherine was late at work. Apparently, she discovered the keys then. You stole the keys and made duplicates, Catherine stated firmly. And now you've broken into someone else's home. That's called illegal entry. What scary legal terms, Viola sighed theatrically. We're family, aren't we? Brother won't mind. Stop playing these games, Catherine took out her phone. Leave the apartment right now. Or I'll call the police, and this time, file a break-in report. The smile slipped from Gwen's face. I wouldn't advise that. Lucas won't like a scandal. Lucas is on my side, Catherine answered firmly. Are you sure? Gwen raised an eyebrow. You've known your husband for only 3 years. I raised him for 27. I know what matters to him. Viola watched the exchange with barely concealed satisfaction, shifting her gaze between the two women. We're not going anywhere, the girl suddenly declared. Lucas knows I'm here. And he approved. Catherine clenched her fists. Prove it. Viola smiled and grabbed her phone from the table. Here you go. A message from him. On the screen, a chat was displayed. The last message supposedly sent from Lucas's number read, "Of course, D, let her stay with us for now. Catherine won't mind." Catherine squinted. That proves nothing. You could have created a fake contact under his name. Call him and check, Viola scoffed. He's on an expedition, with no signal, Catherine reminded her. Which is very convenient for your scam. Gwen sighed dramatically. You're unbearable, Catherine. You always suspect everyone, Gwen said softly reproachful. Viola is the daughter of my first husband. We hadn't spoken for a long time but recently reconnected. Lucas knows about it. Then why have I never heard about her? Catherine kept her eyes fixed on her mother-in-law. Maybe he didn't want to upset you, Gwen shrugged. You're so nervous. Catherine caught Viola casting a quick, uncertain glance at Gwen. Something didn't add up. Regardless of whether I believe you or not, Catherine said firmly, you need to leave the apartment. Right now. And where exactly are we supposed to go at 5 in the morning? Gwen exclaimed theatrically, throwing up her hands. Back where you came from, Catherine cut her off. You had housing before today. You'll have it again after. Viola stopped smiling. I'm not going anywhere. I have a work contract starting here in a week. Renting an apartment is expensive. Not my problem. But it is Lucas's, right? Gwen said softly, almost coaxingly. You know, Catherine, my son is very protective of family ties. What do you think he'll say when he finds out you kicked his sister out on the street? Catherine felt a fire ignite inside her. They were pressing a sore spot. Her relationship with Lucas had been tense lately, constant expeditions, rare calls, distance. You know what? Catherine took a deep breath. Stay for today. I'll sleep in the living room, and tomorrow we'll sort everything out. Gwen smiled triumphantly. A reasonable decision. But keep in mind, Catherine met her gaze, I will contact Lucas tomorrow. And if it turns out you're lying. No need for threats, Catherine, Gwen interrupted softly. Everything will be resolved in the best way. Catherine headed to the bathroom, and with horror found strange belongings spread out. Her cosmetics had been pushed aside, and an unfamiliar shampoo bottle stood on the shelf. She looked up at the mirror, her face looked gaunt, tired. Thoughts jumbled, but one thing was clear, something was seriously wrong. Even if Viola really was Gwen's daughter, why had Lucas never mentioned her? And why was Gwen so confident she could act with impunity? Morning brought a new discovery. Waking on the living room sofa, Catherine noticed some of her things were missing from the closet. And the fridge contained groceries she had never bought. Good morning, neighbor, Viola floated into the kitchen wearing Catherine's pajamas. Coffee? Where did you get my pajamas? Catherine asked quietly. Oh, sorry, Viola waved carelessly. I didn't figure out whose was whose. Mom went to the store. Said your fridge was empty. Catherine silently watched as the girl moved confidently and deftly around her kitchen. There was something surprisingly familiar in her gestures, the tilt of her head, the way she carried herself. She really did remind Catherine of Lucas, and those little details that can't be faked. "Tell me about yourself," Catherine suddenly suggested. "Where did you live before?" Viola tensed slightly. "In Boston. With my father." "Lucas's father?" "No. Mine. We have different fathers, only Mom, Gwen, is the same." "And how long ago did you reconnect?" "About a year ago," Viola smiled, but her eyes stayed cold. "You know, sometimes family ties break, then they heal again." "It happens," Catherine nodded. "It's just strange that Lucas hasn't mentioned you once in these 3 years. He probably didn't want to burden you with his family dramas. Men are so secretive." At that moment, the front door slammed. Gwen returned with bags. "I brought breakfast," she announced cheerfully. "Catherine, you have nothing to eat at home at all." "I was on a business trip," Catherine reminded her. "And I wasn't expecting guests." "See how good it is that we're here," Gwen said serenely. "Lucas will come back, and the house will be tidy and there'll be food." After breakfast, during which Catherine silently watched the two women effortlessly and boldly settling into her home, she decided, enough. "I'm going to contact Lucas," Catherine said calmly. "He's supposed to have a communication session today according to the schedule." Gwen and Viola exchanged glances. "I don't think that's necessary," Gwen said cautiously. "Why bother your son over such trivial things?" "Having strangers living in our apartment is not trivial," Catherine cut in. "We're not strangers," Viola said hurtfully. "We're family." Catherine looked at her carefully. "Prove it." Gwen stood up sharply. "We have nothing to prove. Lucas will confirm everything when he returns." "He won't be back for another 10 days, Catherine reminded them. "I'm not going to tolerate uninvited guests for that long." "You don't have a choice," Gwen said unexpectedly harshly. "We're staying here." "On what grounds?" Catherine felt rage boiling inside her. "On the grounds that Lucas is a co-owner of this apartment," Gwen straightened up. "And as his mother, I have the right to be here with his permission." Catherine realized the conversation had reached a dead end. She needed to change tactics. "Fine," she agreed unexpectedly. "Let's say you stay. But I want to know more about my sister-in-law. Tell me, Viola, where did you work in Boston?" The girl tensed. "At a company selling medical equipment. But I was offered a better position here." "At which company?" "At MedTech Service," Viola answered quickly. "I'll be a regional manager." Catherine nodded and pretended to believe her. She knew almost all the companies in their city. Her work in business consulting gave her a wide network of contacts. MedTech Service existed, but they definitely weren't hiring new regional managers, especially without experience. "When do you start work?" Catherine asked casually. "In a week." Viola looked away. "First, I need to get settled in and comfortable." "In my apartment," Catherine clarified. "In my brother's apartment," Viola retorted. Gwen intervened. "Girls, don't argue. Catherine, you need to rest after your trip, and Viola and I will prepare lunch for now." Catherine stood up. "I will rest indeed. In the bedroom." "But," Viola began. "In my bedroom," Catherine repeated firmly. "Where, I assume, you've already settled in." In the bedroom, Catherine found Viola's scattered belongings. Her own things were neatly piled in a corner. The bed linen had been changed. Closing the door, Catherine took out her phone and dialed the number of her friend Melissa, who worked at a recruitment agency. "Melissa, I need urgent help. Can you run a check on someone?" "Viola." She faltered, realizing she didn't know the last name of her husband's supposed sister. "So, I need to find out if anyone named Viola worked in Boston at companies related to medical equipment." "That's a strange request," Melissa said, surprised. "But I'll check." "What happened?" "I'll explain later. Also, check if MedTech Service has recently hired a regional manager." After finishing the call, Catherine dialed Lucas's satellite phone. After many rings, the voicemail picked up. She left a message. "Lucas, this is urgent. Call me as soon as you get this message. Your mother and some Viola showed up at our apartment. They claim she's your sister." After a short break, Catherine returned to the living room with a determined look. Gwen and Viola were whispering about something in the kitchen but fell silent when she appeared. "I spoke with Melissa from MedTech Service," Catherine lied, watching their reactions. "She said they haven't hired any Viola as a regional manager." Viola's face twitched slightly, but she quickly composed herself. "Of course not. Because I'm being hired through the head office, not the local branch. Your Melissa just doesn't know about it." "I see," Catherine said slowly. "And when is the head office representative coming?" "Next week," Viola answered quickly. Gwen intervened. "Enough with the interrogations, Catherine. You're behaving disgracefully. Viola is your husband's sister, and you're treating her like a criminal." "I'm not even sure she's really your daughter," Catherine retorted, "let alone that Lucas has never mentioned her." Gwen went pale. "How dare you? Viola is my daughter. We just had a difficult relationship. Lucas didn't want to burden you with it." "My husband wouldn't hide the existence of a sister from me," Catherine said firmly. "Something's wrong here, and I'm going to find out what exactly." Catherine's phone rang. She looked at the screen, Melissa's number. "Excuse me," Catherine said, stepping into the hallway and closing the door tightly behind her. "Catherine, you won't believe it," Melissa's voice sounded excited. "I found nothing about any Viola in Boston. But MedTech Service really is hiring a regional manager. The job posting appeared only yesterday, and it's not in public sources yet." Catherine froze. Then how could Viola have known? "No idea," Melissa answered. "Hey, what's going on?" "I'll tell you later." Catherine ended the call and returned to the kitchen. Gwen and Viola fell silent at her arrival, whispering again about something. "So, Viola," Catherine began calmly, "you say MedTech Service hired you. But the vacancy appeared only yesterday. How could you have known about it in advance?" Viola blazed. "I have connections." "What kind of connections?" "None of your business," Gwen interrupted. "Enough with these interrogations." Catherine crossed her arms. "I think it's time to call the police. Illegal entry, fraud." "I wouldn't advise that," Viola said suddenly harshly. "You don't understand what you're getting into." There was such certainty in the girl's voice that Catherine was momentarily taken aback. What if she really was Lucas's sister? But why all the secrecy then? "Explain to me." Catherine sat opposite them. "If you really are Lucas's sister, why all the secrecy? Why has he never spoken about you?" Gwen and Viola exchanged glances. Something in that look made Catherine uneasy. "Family secrets are not always pleasant to discuss," Gwen finally said. "Viola and her father, we had a conflict. I preferred to leave my daughter with my ex-husband. Lucas knew we agreed not to stir up the past. And suddenly, after all these years, you made peace? Catherine asked incredulously. Viola lowered her eyes. My father died 6 months ago. I was left alone and decided to find my mother. The story sounded plausible, but something in Viola's tone made Catherine doubt. I'm sorry about your father, Catherine said. But that doesn't explain why you barged into my apartment without warning me. We tried, Gwen exclaimed. We called you several times. Catherine checked her phone. No missed calls from unknown numbers. Nothing like that. Then the calls didn't go through, Gwen shrugged. Anyway, Lucas knows we're here. That's why he secretly made duplicate keys. Catherine shook her head. That doesn't sound like my husband. People change, Gwen said meaningfully. Especially when they remember family values. At that moment, Catherine's phone rang again. An unknown number appeared on the screen. Hello? Catherine, it's Lucas, her husband's distant, broken voice sounded. I got your message. What sister? Catherine quickly stepped into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. Lucas, thank God. Your mother and some girl showed up in our apartment. They claim she's your sister, Viola. There was a crackle on the line, then a surprised voice. What Viola? I don't have a sister. I knew it, Catherine exclaimed. They say she's your mother's daughter from her first marriage. Nonsense. Mom never. Only me. First marriage, 5 years, childless. The connection was lost. Catherine tried to call back, but the phone was out of range. She took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Now she had confirmation, Lucas didn't know any Viola. Then who was she? And what did they want? Catherine came out of the bedroom looking determined, holding the phone in her hand. That was Lucas, she said, looking Gwen straight in the eyes. He said he doesn't have any sister. And that your first marriage was childless. Who are you really? Gwen's face twisted with anger, but she quickly composed herself. The connection is bad. You misunderstood. Lucas knows about Viola. Stop lying. Catherine couldn't hold back. I'm calling the police now, and you'll have to explain to them. Don't bother, Viola said calmly, unexpectedly. Let's talk like adults. No police, Viola said. She walked over to her bag and took out a folder with documents. I think you'll be interested to see this. Catherine took the offered folder suspiciously. Inside were photographs, and with the very first shots, she felt the ground slip beneath her feet. The photos showed Lucas and Viola. They were hugging, laughing, holding hands. Some showed them kissing. What does this mean? Catherine whispered. He didn't tell you about a sister because I'm not his sister, Viola said calmly. I'm his lover. For 2 years already. Gwen pressed her lips. I don't approve of this relationship, but what can you do? You can't command the heart. Lucas loves Viola. Catherine looked at the photos, not believing her eyes. Some were taken in restaurants, on the street, in the park. The last one was near a hotel. This is a fake, she finally managed to say. Photoshop? Sadly, no, Viola shook her head. Lucas and I met 2 years ago in Boston when he was there on a business trip. Since then, we've been seeing each other whenever we can. I decided to move here to be closer. Lucas loves me, Catherine said stubbornly, though everything inside was collapsing. Those photos, they looked so real. He loves us both, Viola shrugged. Just differently. You, as a wife, as a partner. me as passion, as a secret. He couldn't choose, so I decided to choose for him. By moving into my apartment, Catherine said bitterly, smiling wryly. Lucas promised to sort everything out when he returns, Gwen interrupted. We just rushed things. Catherine looked at the photos again, desperately searching for signs of forgery. But they looked real. And that explained a lot, Lucas's frequent business trips, his recent distance. If it's true, Catherine said slowly. Then why did Lucas just say he doesn't know any Viola? Because he was scared, Gwen answered quickly. He didn't expect you to find out so soon. He wanted to explain everything himself when he returned. He never admitted to you that he's unhappy, Viola added softly. Lucas is too kind. He didn't want to hurt you. Catherine felt a strange mix of pain, rage, and distrust building inside her. Something wasn't adding up. She looked carefully at one of the photos. In it, Lucas and Viola were standing in front of a hotel. When was this picture taken? Catherine asked, showing the photo. In February this year, Viola answered without hesitation. Catherine smiled slowly. Interesting. Because the hotel was demolished last year. In February, there was only an empty lot there. Viola's face twisted. I got the date wrong. It was earlier. No, it wasn't, Catherine pointed at the winter clothes in the photo. You can see it's winter. And the hotel was already gone last December. And you know what else? Lucas has a scar on his chin in this photo that he only got in September last year. So this definitely can't be a picture taken before the hotel was demolished. Gwen stood up nervously. Catherine, you're nitpicking. What difference does it make where and when? A huge difference, Catherine interrupted. Because these photos are fake. Bad fakes. And both of you are frauds. Viola's expression changed sharply. The feigned softness disappeared, her eyes narrowed. You think you're so smart? Well, fine. But we have something you don't. And what's that? The keys to the apartment. And Gwen's support, your husband's mother. Whose word do you think he'll trust more, yours or his mother's? So you admit he doesn't know about your scam? Catherine smirked. Gwen waved her hand irritably. Of course he doesn't know. My son is too decent. But when he comes back and finds out you kicked his own mother out onto the street. I'm not kicking anyone out, Catherine answered calmly. You will leave on your own. The police will be here in 5 minutes. Bluffing, Viola snorted. Not at all, Catherine showed the phone screen with 911 dialed. I've already sent them the photos you showed me. Attempted fraud, illegal entry. I think they'll be interested in talking to you. Gwen went pale. You won't dare disgrace the family. What family? Catherine narrowed her eyes. The real one or the fake one? Catherine asked. Viola suddenly laughed. You know, I like you. Not the simpleton Gwen described. She turned to the older woman. I think it's time for us to go. But, Gwen began. It's time, Viola repeated. There was steel in her voice. The plan didn't work. She turned out to be smarter than we thought. Catherine crossed her arms. I'm listening. What plan? Viola only smirked as she started gathering her things. Oh, it was simple. Gwen dreams of getting her precious son back. You're too independent, not what she wanted. So she decided to, how should I put it, push your marriage to collapse. Viola. Gwen protested. So what? She already figured it all out, Viola shrugged. And you agreed to help her? Catherine stared intently. Why? Money, of course, Viola answered simply. Gwen is very generous when it comes to her son's happiness. Besides, I really needed a job and a place to stay. And the plan was simple: pretend to be a mistress, make you have a nervous breakdown, undermine Lucas's trust. Shut up! Gwen shouted. You're only making things worse. There's nothing left to make worse, Viola waved her off. She called the police. Or didn't you hear? Catherine watched the argument carefully. The plan, frankly, was unimpressive. But if it weren't for the call to Lucas, if it weren't for the hotel mistake, she might have believed it. Might have caused a scene. And that's exactly what Gwen wanted. By the way, Catherine suddenly said, I didn't call the police. Both women froze. What do you want? Gwen asked cautiously. The truth, Catherine said simply. The whole truth. Not just about your stupid plan. Who is Viola really? Viola tensed. I'm an actress. Gwen hired me through some acquaintances. That's strange, Catherine shook her head. But I don't believe you. You look too much like Lucas. The same eyes. The same gestures. You're like relatives. Gwen sank heavily into a chair. Her voice was quiet. Viola really is my daughter. Silence fell in the room. Viola looked at her mother as if she had just betrayed her. What? Catherine finally managed to say. But you said. I lied to Lucas, Gwen said, avoiding eye contact. Viola is my daughter from my first marriage. But I never told my son about her. Why? Catherine asked. Because I abandoned her, Gwen said with a trembling voice. Left her with my ex-husband and left. Started a new life with Lucas's father. It was easier to pretend Viola never existed. Viola stood like she was carved from stone. Her face showed no emotion. 28 years, she said quietly. 28 years you didn't think about me. Until you needed help destroying someone else's marriage. That's not true. Gwen exclaimed. I looked for you before. I just didn't know how. How to establish contact. Viola interrupted bitterly. And decided the best way was to drag me into a scam? Great motherly instinct. Catherine shifted her gaze between the two women, trying to process what she'd heard. So, you really are Lucas's sister? His half-sister? Apparently so, Viola nodded. Though he doesn't know. And all of this, just to destroy our marriage, Catherine shook her head. Gwen, did you seriously think this would work? The older woman pursed her lips. You're not right for my son. Always traveling. Your career comes first. What kind of wife are you? What kind of mother to his children? That's not for you to decide, Catherine said firmly. This is our marriage. Our life. I am his mother. Gwen raised her voice. I know better what he needs. Viola suddenly laughed. Oh God. How sad. For 28 years I didn't exist to you. And now you pretend to be a caring mother? She turned to Catherine. Sorry for the circus. I didn't know she hid my existence from her brother. Gwen jumped up. Shut up. Don't you dare call him your brother. Why? Viola asked calmly. Are you afraid your perfect son will find out what you really are? A woman who abandoned her own child? Catherine watched the unfolding family drama with growing disbelief. Everything she had learned in the last few hours had overturned her view of her mother-in-law and her husband's family as a whole. "Listen," she finally said, "I won't call the police, but you both will leave my apartment right now." "And what about Lucas?" Gwen asked. "Will you tell him that his mother tried to ruin our marriage with the help of a daughter she hid from him her whole life?" Catherine smiled bitterly. "I don't know, but that's for me to decide, not you." Gwen lowered her head. "He won't forgive me." "Maybe," Catherine agreed, "but those will be his feelings, his decisions." Viola began gathering her things. "You know, Catherine, you're not as bad as my mother described. It's a shame we met under such circumstances. Did you really not know that Lucas had no idea you existed?" Catherine asked. "I swear," Viola answered seriously. "Gwen said he knows about his sister, but they don't communicate because of some old grudges. I thought I was helping to reunite the family and at the same time getting compensation for years of neglect. I didn't know she was so cunning." Gwen silently packed her things without looking at anyone. "So what will you do now?" Catherine asked. Viola shrugged. "I'll find a job, rent an apartment. I really just moved here recently, wanted to start a new life, just didn't think it would start like this." "And the job at MedTech Service?" Catherine clarified. "That's true," Viola nodded. "I really got in there through my father's acquaintances. Not as a regional manager, of course, but as a regular sales specialist. Gwen offered me this scam as extra income." Catherine thought for a moment. Despite everything that had happened, she couldn't help but feel sympathy for this woman, abandoned by her mother, dragged into fraud. And yet she was Lucas's sister, his blood sister, of whose existence he was unaware. Viola handed over the apartment keys. "Sorry for the intrusion." Gwen, already ready to leave, stood by the door with pursed lips. "I hope you won't tell Lucas. It will break his heart." "You should have thought about that earlier," Catherine replied coldly. When both women left, Catherine slowly sank onto the sofa. Her head was spinning from the flood of information and emotions. The apartment, filled with strangers' things and voices just that morning, now seemed empty and unusually quiet. She dialed Lucas's satellite phone again, but it was out of range. What would she tell him? How to explain all this? Catherine stood and walked around the apartment. The stranger's perfume still lingered in the bedroom. Gwen's groceries were still on the kitchen counter. A forgotten hairpin lay in the bathroom. She opened the window, letting in fresh air. She needed to think it over, decide what to do. On one hand, the truth could destroy Lucas's relationship with his mother. On the other hand, did she have the right to hide the existence of his biological sister from her husband? The phone rang, making Catherine jump. The same unknown number appeared on the screen, Lucas. "Yes, the connection is terrible," her husband's voice sounded worried. "What's going on there?" "What sister?" "Your mother?" Catherine took a deep breath. The moment of truth. "Lucas, your mother really did come here with a girl named Viola." "And who is she?" Lucas's voice was puzzled. "It's hard to explain over this connection," Catherine said cautiously. "Let's talk when you get back." "Did something happen?" Lucas worried. "Did they hurt you?" "No, everything's fine. They already left." "Catherine, you're hiding something. I can hear it in your voice." She closed her eyes, realizing she couldn't keep it a secret. "Viola, it seems she's your sister, your real sister. Your mother had her in her first marriage but never told you about her." Silence hung on the line. "What?" Lucas finally said. "Is this some kind of joke?" I wish it were a joke, Catherine sighed. Your mother confirmed it. They tried to prove something to me, but everything went wrong. Viola, Lucas repeated. I remember Dad once mentioned it, but I thought it was just family gossip. The connection crackled. Lucas's voice started to break up. I'm alone now, I'll be back soon. Lucas. The call was cut off. Catherine looked at the phone, realizing that a proper conversation would have to wait until her husband returned. She slowly went to the kitchen and took the tea Gwen had brought. She brewed a cup, staring out the window at the evening city. The phone in her pocket vibrated. A message from an unknown number. This is Viola. Can we talk without Gwen? Catherine stared at the message for a long time, deciding whether it was worth continuing communication with this woman. On the other hand, she really was Lucas's sister, a biological sister who didn't know about her brother, just as he didn't know about her. All right, where? Catherine finally replied. A cozy cafe, in an hour. It's not far from your house. Catherine knew this cafe, a small quiet place in the neighboring block. Perfect for a conversation. Okay. Exactly an hour later, Catherine was sitting at a table in the corner of the room, nervously stirring her tea. The entrance door opened, and Viola came in, now without the striking makeup, dressed simply. She looked younger and resembled Lucas more. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Viola said, sitting opposite her. I wanted to apologize and explain. I'm listening, Catherine replied calmly. Viola nervously fidgeted with a napkin. I really didn't know that Lucas was unaware of my existence. Gwen found me 3 months ago, said she wanted to restore our relationship. She told me about the son, about you. When she proposed this plan, I thought it was some kind of strange test, like a trial for a daughter-in-law. A test for what? For loyalty, faithfulness, I don't know, Viola shrugged. I didn't really believe it would work, but I needed the money, and I was curious to see my brother, at least from afar. You could have just contacted him directly, Catherine remarked. And say, hi, I'm your sister, whom you were never told about, Viola smiled bitterly. I was afraid he simply wouldn't believe me. Catherine looked carefully at her interlocutor, trying to see in her features a resemblance to her husband. Now that she knew the truth, it seemed obvious, the same expressive eyes, the same shape of lips. I don't know what to do, Catherine admitted. I started telling Lucas, but the connection was lost. He will be shocked. I understand, Viola nodded. If you decide it's better for me to disappear from your lives, I'll understand. I'll just leave, find a job in another city. And what do you want yourself? Viola thought for a moment. Honestly, I'd like to get to know my brother. I've been alone all my life. Father didn't really care about me, few friends. When Gwen told me about Lucas, I felt like maybe I have a chance to have a real family. In her words, Catherine heard a sincerity that hadn't been there before. You know, Catherine said slowly, I think Lucas has the right to know the truth and the right to decide for himself whether he wants to communicate with a sister who was kept from him. Viola nodded. I understand, that would be fair. What about Gwen? Catherine asked. Did you talk after you left? Oh, yes, Viola smiled grimly. She tried to convince me that she did everything for my own good, that she didn't want to interfere with my life with our father. Typical excuse for those who abandon their children. Catherine looked out the window. Rain was starting. Drops drummed on the glass. Lucas will return in 10 days. What will you do until then? I'll stay in a hotel, Viola answered. I'll prepare for work. I really got a job at MedTech Service. Not as a regional manager, of course, but still. Catherine finished her tea, thinking. It was strange to sit opposite a woman who that morning had tried to ruin her marriage and now turned out to be family. All right, she finally said. Here's what I propose. Lucas returns in 10 days. I will tell him everything as it is. If he wants to meet you, I will contact you. Fair enough, Viola nodded. Thank you for understanding. I know I was wrong to agree to this scheme. Why did you agree at all? Catherine asked. It wasn't just for the money, was it? Viola lowered her eyes. Maybe I wanted to get back at Gwen, at fate, I don't know. I grew up knowing that my mother abandoned me. That leaves a mark, you know. And then she shows up and says I have a brother who lived with her and whom she loved. Catherine nodded understandingly. The hurt of an abandoned child is a terrible thing. When they said goodbye at the cafe door, Viola extended her hand. Sorry again for everything. And thank you for not calling the police. Watch out for Gwen, Catherine said seriously. I don't think she'll accept failure. Viola smiled bitterly. Believe me, I've learned to live without a mother and I can definitely live without her intrigues. 10 days later, Catherine met her husband at the airport. Lucas looked drawn and worried. A few times during those days he managed to get in touch, and Catherine briefly told him what had happened, but they postponed the full conversation until they met. Is it true? He asked as soon as they got in the car. I really have a sister. Catherine nodded. The resemblance is obvious. The same eyes, the same shape of lips. Viola is your mother's daughter from her first marriage. Lucas looked straight ahead, gripping the steering wheel tightly. I can't believe Mother hid this my whole life. Why? I think she was ashamed, Catherine said quietly. She left Viola to her ex-husband and started a new life with your father. It was easier to pretend the past didn't exist. And now she was trying to use her own daughter to destroy our marriage. There was pain in Lucas's voice. How could she? She never approved of our marriage, Catherine reminded him. She thought I wasn't suitable. They drove home in silence. As they were going up to the apartment, Lucas suddenly stopped. I want to meet her, Viola. She's still in town, right? Catherine nodded. Yes, I kept in touch with her. She's waiting for your decision. The next day they met in the same cafe. Viola arrived first and waited at a table in the corner. Seeing Catherine and Lucas enter, she visibly tensed. Lucas stopped, looking at his sister. Now that he knew the truth, the resemblance seemed obvious. Hi, he said awkwardly. I'm Lucas. Viola, she smiled faintly. Although, you already know. They sat at the table. The first few minutes passed in tense silence, but then the ice began to melt. They talked about childhood, parents, and work. Has she called you? Lucas suddenly asked. Mom. Viola shook her head. No, I think she's too proud to admit defeat. I haven't heard a word from her either. Lucas sighed. I don't know if I can forgive her. Give yourself time, Catherine said gently. And give her time too. 3 months later, Catherine stood by the window, watching Lucas help Viola unload boxes from the car. After several meetings, they decided that Viola would move into an apartment nearby. It would be easier to maintain their relationship that way. Gwen tried to contact her son several times, but Lucas was not ready to talk yet. However, Catherine knew that sooner or later he would forgive his mother. That's just the kind of person he was. Meanwhile, they were building a new family with a new relative who had unexpectedly appeared in their lives. Funny, Catherine thought, how a stranger's intrigue led to a completely different result than Gwen expected. The phone rang. Gwen's name appeared on the screen. "I'm listening," Catherine said. "How is he?" her mother-in-law asked cautiously. "Happy," Catherine answered honestly. "He found a sister." A sigh was heard on the other end. "And I lost a son." "Not forever," Catherine said softly. "Give him time."